Thank you very much. Deputy Joan Collins.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. Will the Taoiseach join me in congratulating two female migrant workers who've recently won a quite significant claim against the unfair dismissal in the Labour Court? Julia Marciniak, originally from Poland, and Lenka Laiermanova, originally from the Czech Republic, were found to have been sacked by the IV restaurant on Dawson Street for trade union activity. Two experienced waitresses joined the newly opened IV restaurant in 2018 and found that customer tips were being taken by management and used to make up the difference between their contracted wages and the minimum wage. After Lenka had contacted me through my constituency office, I arranged for her and a group of her fellow workers to meet with the trade union Unite, which they joined and which sought negotiation rights with the Ivy, which was rejected. It's quite rare for an unfair dismissal case over trade union activity to be won in the Labour Court, and the case has a wider significance. That significance is that while the Unfair Dismissals Act only kicks in after a year with a specific employer, there are exceptions, one of which is trade union activity. However, that one-year rule does give some employers and managers licence to dismiss workers on a whim. As Julia said to the Irish Times, if you ask about your breaks, you can be dismissed, see you. Both Julia and Lenka and Unite Regional Secretary Brendan Ogle have called for the Act to be amended, giving all workers protection against unfair dismissal from day one of their employment. The other aspect of this is that there is no penalty under the Act for employers who are found to have unfairly dismissed staff. All the Labour Court can do is make an employer pay for loss of earnings up to 2 years after an unfair dismissal. Both Julia and Lenka found work and new jobs very quickly, so the compensation to be paid by the IV is quite limited. There should be penalties against employers who are found to unfairly dismiss workers. So finally, Taoiseach, would you join me, as I said, in congratulating Julia and Lenka and their trade union Unite on this victory over a very exploitative, bullying employer, and encourage all workers who are suffering low pay, bullying by employers and managers, denial of their rights under Labour law, to join a union, to stand up for yourself and your workmates, because acting together with the backing of your union, you can win.
Well, first of all, I thank the Deputy for raising the issue, and I pay tribute to the two workers concerned. To go to the unfair dismissals tribunal is not an easy journey and can be a very challenging one for young workers. And I pay tribute to them for seeing that through. And in terms of the specifics of the case, you're saying that the tips were essentially being retained or kept or used as part of wages, which is absolutely unacceptable practice. And there's separate work being done by government in relation to that. In my view, that's reprehensible and wrong, if that was what transpired here. I also would say to you that under the LEAF, under the Labour Forum, there are discussions underway between trade union leadership, employer leadership and government in respect of collective bargaining more generally. We have freedom of association in the country under the Constitution, so that governs the relationship between employer and employees, and so that's not as simple to resolve as one might think, but there are serious negotiations underway in respect of it through the LEAF forum itself. And in my view, equally, employees should always feel entitled to raise issues without being punished for raising issues by employers. And there's a basic code of conduct that has to apply in relation to employer-employee relations. And certainly if you have specific proposals, I'll certainly discuss them with the Taoiseach and Minister for Enterprise in respect of the reforms that are being contemplated in the context of labour relations reforms and how they can be improved to enhance the rights of workers, but also to facilitate the smooth operation of collective bargaining and in terms of worker-employer relations in this country.
For joining in with myself in congratulating those workers, because as you said, it's a very high bar. There's actually no other case that we know of in Ireland that has actually won an unfair dismissal on trade union activity. So I really think that at the moment, the unfair dismissal should be amended, giving all workers protection against unfair dismissal from day one of their employment, not 12 months. That 12 months is much too long. And to deal with the issue that there is no penalty under the Act for employers who are found to have been unfairly dismissed. There's also the issue, as you said, of trade union recognition and the right of union to access the premises of their members. That is crucially another issue that has to be addressed. The current legislation for the payment of wages amendment, tips and gratuities Bill 2022 is going through the Dáil committee at the moment, and it partly addresses the issue of literally employers robbing tips from workers, but it must deal with the issue of the service charges. And that has to go, in my opinion. The ID still have a 12.5% service charge on all tables. The service charge is used to pay wages and used as business income. The one waiter, waitress, one owner, manager of a bar restaurant in Connemara says they should be abolished, and I think service charges should be abolished as well. And would you agree?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
I am minded to dispose to the abolition of service charges. I think in any event there should be full and absolute transparency governing them, because many people are under the impression that when they pay a service charge, it's to workers, and that's not the case in many instances. So I think we need absolute transparency. And ideally, actually, I think it's the consumer should be handing directly to the employee or to a group of employees, however those mechanisms can be facilitated as an additional sort of contribution if consumers are so minded, people who attend restaurants or whatever. And I think that needs to be absolutely clarified, and I think in the context of the legislation going through the House, I know the Taoiseach is anxious to clarify that and make it as transparent as possible and simplified in respect of what the reality on the ground is. In respect of amendments to the Unfair Dismissals Act, I mean, there's a balance has to be struck here in terms of competing rights and practical issues as well in terms of employment and so forth. And again, that's a matter that we keep under constant review. Trade union activity in itself should not be the subject matter of dismissal. But thank you.